The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. We're just going to give it a couple more minutes to see if any more attendees join. Thank you for being here for the Agile Education Marketing webinar on the power of the ecosystem from contact to close. Well, I think we should probably get started. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the Agile Education Marketing webinar on the power of the ecosystem from contact to close. On today's agenda, we'll be discussing this marvelous marketing ecosystem, and we'll be discussing the inputs for it. And so you can set it up for success properly. We'll break it down for you so that you can understand all the channels and mapping messaging and content. And then we will talk about the supports that also ensure that your ecosystem is implemented with fidelity. So you're going to hear a lot more about all three of those things momentarily, because I am going to introduce a person I can't think of a better person to speak to this subject, but Liz Acton. She's the Director of Marketing for Agile Education, and she has actually held several senior level marketing roles, including companies like Pearson, Shea Holmes, and CenturyLink. So she is well versed in the subject of education marketing. And without further ado, I'm going to ask Liz to talk to you about the ecosystem. Liz, take it away.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. And good morning, or almost good afternoon for some of you, I'm sure, everyone. And thanks so much for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to going through everything that we've put together for our session today, because I think it's important and it's timely in today's digital age with, the way that people in general are interacting with brands and making purchase decisions. It definitely transfers over into B2B marketing, which, education is really just B2B. And I think that there's a lot of things that happen on the consumer side and inside of really focused digital marketing that we can start to learn from, take advantage of, and put to our own use so that we can grow our own businesses and better achieve our own objectives. So I wanted to go back through the agenda in a little more detail before we get started into some of the meat of what we have today. And one of the biggest things is this inputs for the ecosystem. So this notion of the ecosystem is really important, and it's fundamental to everything that we're going to go through today. And what that really means is everything fits together, everything works together, everything builds on itself. And as a marketer and in your planning efforts, you have to consider all the different pieces at the same time. And so some of what we'll do is really talk through basically customer segmentation and messaging, the actual channels themselves and how that fits in with the educational buying cycle. And then, supports for this, because of course, as marketers, we have to be, in a sense, justifying what we're doing, but always making sure that we're being really transparent with our efforts and how we are tracking to the success of the business. And so we'll talk a little bit about how we do that, and everything will feed in and flow into everything else, so that by the time we're done together, I feel like you'll have a really good understanding of the different pieces, how they fit together, and how you can start to consider each of them, not discretely and independently, but as parts of this moving machine, if you will. So let's go ahead and move to the first piece of this whole giant thing that we're talking about today. What is the actual ecosystem? And so, this is where, in education especially, there's not one clear path to closing the deal. And there's end users who might be students and stakeholders, there's final decision makers, there's purchasing departments. And when you start to overlay some of the different elements of the actual education market, like funds that are earmarked for specific purposes, a set school year, you're going to find that you need to reach a lot of people with specific messages in short windows. And the most effective way to do this is to take advantage of all the different channels you have available to you to send out your message. So here's examples of all the different channels. You've got your branding, you've got email, you've got print and online ads, perhaps you've got, physical events and trade shows either hosted or attended, and you've got social media. You've got all these different multiple touch points that work together. And so because you've got to reach so many different people, this is really going to help you when you consider taking a step back to old school marketing, right? Like a million years ago when I was working for the phone company, we used direct mail, and we knew that we had to send at least 8 messages via direct mail before someone would make a purchase decision. So how you can use information and data points like that in today's world is just think, wow, human beings, people need to see the same message, and now we know in multiple ways, many times before they really understand it and before it resonates and before they're ready to make a decision. So in today's marketing world, we have lots of different ways that we can engage and interact with people and inform them, make them aware of who we are even. And so because of that, it's great, but it also can be really challenging. So let's start out with who we're even going to try to focus on. So let's move to, how do you segment your customer base? So, you've uncovered now all the different ways you can reach people. And maybe you've even gotten to the part of what you want to say. We'll talk a little more about that in a second. And now you need to figure out who are the contacts most likely to want to do business with you. So if you're a newer company, this could be kind of challenging. If you're a startup or it's a new product, you're introducing this to the market, but what market? So you may need to do market projections and analysis, and this can be really helpful to create a starting point from which to measure your performance and get to the part where you've identified potential segments and refine those segments so that you can understand, is it big schools, small schools, rural schools, or is it a guidance counselor or a media specialist or a lead teacher? Who is it at what type of school that's really a good target for you? If you're in a well-established business, this is going to be much easier. And so what you see on the screen in front of you is an example of a product that Agile offers. It's called our eProfile product. And what you can do is analyze your best customers. And this is the most effective way to define what we call lookalike targets. And this is going to improve your ability to reach the right people to hand over to sales. So in this example, you can see there's red callouts and green callouts. And this is a small sample of all the different data points that we can look at to help you understand which data points are really meaningful and describe your ideal target, and which ones you're doing well and which ones you're not doing so well. So if you're doing well, you want to do more. So that's where lookalike targeting comes in to help you better segment and target your efforts. And if you're not doing well, you can either say, maybe not a good way to spend my resources right now, or you can update and differentiate your strategy to them. Maybe you're going to communicate differently. Maybe it's a different product or a different feature benefit dynamic that is going to work really well in that particular market. So that's how you can start to identify who you need to be going after. So we've talked about the channels, we talked about who, and we've just shown you, here's a really great tool to help you inform some of that. So now what on earth are you going to say? So let's move to, messaging and compelling content. So customer profiles and the business objectives are what you want to guide you. What you say is critical to your communications, and there's many reasons your product is a great fit. And each stakeholder is going to be looking for something that supports their own goals. So we want to understand needs and motivations. You see here we put test, 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 and we're going to continue to talk about that, how you make it happen, and why it's really important. So you want to match the featured benefit to a person's role, and that's the easiest way to get your communication to resonate. You want to test to further refine what works best, and there might even be some additional considerations beyond the role that play into effective messaging. What type of school are they at? So an example that I think works really well here is to say you're an ed tech company, and you have found through asking questions or just looking at your purchasing data, guidance counselors are a key champion that has resulted in closed-won deals for you. So you know that guidance counselors are focused on student success, but student success can mean a lot of different things. So in schools with high graduation rates, college requirements might be a focus. In schools with lower graduation rates, maybe it's passing just the minimum requirements, and that's the key. In an urban school, a technology solution that can be used across schools and districts is preferred because it's going to reduce the amount of training and support that's needed. It's transferable, right? And if you're in a rural school and you're still that guidance counselor, you might be really looking for solutions that can offer a variety of classes to students without requiring full-time staff to deliver those. So just looking at, once you've identified that guidance counselor as a key stakeholder for you, you could still end up with 5 or 6 different communication strategies. And that is where you are going to need to go from the 8 direct mail messages that we talked about to potentially 25, 30 different messages, and then consider them across all the different outreach channels. So what else can you use to help you be more effective? So thank you, Alyssa. So we're going to move to the actual marketing funnel. Now, what we decided to do for this was to really take it down to basics. At the end of the day, what you're trying to do is build awareness, inform consideration. This is where people are getting to their short list, and then the purchase process. So in education especially, because of the nature of the purchasing process inside of schools and districts, the purchase process is still a step to success, and you can't lose sight of that. This is where you want to identify the actual decision makers, but then inform what it's like beyond just your product is a good fit, but are you going to offer them training and support? Are they on demand? If there's a new teacher halfway through the school year, what happens then? So that is all part of that purchasing process. So let's start with awareness. So here you can see that there's, from a channel perspective, email, social, and even advertising are really great ways to build awareness. Now, the right-hand side of this image is what's really important. You need to ensure that for the different pieces of communication you put in place, when you are identifying what success looks like, you're doing it with the proper metric. Impressions, clicks, likes, shares, and comments. Those are what you would expect in a medium where you're just trying to build awareness. Really, it's a broadcast manner of using that channel. And you want to make sure that your performance metrics simply demonstrate that your message was received. And that's what you're trying to do. So next, we're going to look at consideration. So email shows up here too. And social shows up here too. But look, probably on-site messaging, your website, that's going to play a little bit more into consideration versus awareness. So things like click-throughs, downloads, signing up for a trial, or registering for a webinar, that's probably ways that you can identify people who are starting to consider your business, your product, as a good fit for them. During this phase, again, people are creating that short list, and you want them to interact with your product. So moving away from the brand into the product. And you can even target and retarget people who may have experienced your brand during the awareness phase. So that's a really great way to keep things going and move people along this marketing funnel and buying process. And you want to have follow-up messages, and you want to start generating interaction here. As we move people and identify schools, districts, and the right contacts at the schools and districts who are ready to move into the purchase phase with you. So here you can see that some of the tactics, and these do shift quite dramatically when we've moved into the purchase phase. More of the same, email, social, the messages are going to be really different. But you want sales enablement to start being a good tool for this. So, and your inside sales team, and maybe even your regional team. And there's going to be more specific follow-ups. So whereas awareness is broadcast type of communication, and consideration, you're looking for interaction. During purchase, you're looking for engagement, two-way types of communication. You're getting people to cross the finish line. And again, it's more complex in the education space. These committees require several people to agree on the same decision. So don't lose sight of the many ways to engage with people and move them from considering with two-way mediums into this purchase phase. And that might be sales meetings, product demo webinars. They might want to follow up with references. So maybe you want to make it super clear and easy to people who currently are doing business with you. They might know them or know someone at that school so that they can reach out. And you want to make it super easy during this purchase phase. And then the other piece of this communication, again, is beyond just your product. You want to make sure that people understand what it's like to do business with you. Have communication in place or available that describes the implementation support and process that you have, that describes any potentially technical support. What if there's a problem with the order, you didn't get as many? Is it super easy to fix and everything? And what about staff turnover, staff changes? How can you address that? Make that, all those different things, part of that purchase communication program. So again, we talked about the ecosystem. So we've talked about who, and we've talked about the different channels, and we've talked about just the general marketing funnel. The really nice thing about education is, in general, there's a very specific and predictable buying cycle. And I think that when you really take this down to its basics, it becomes a lot easier to work with as a marketer. So here you can see, again, just 3 major phases. And when you overlay this to your communication plans, it's going to make things a lot easier for you when you're considering that now you have to come up with 25, 30 different messages, and you've got guidance counselors and media specialists and all these different things. You understand the basic marketing funnel, buying cycle, and you also, because we're in education, you understand the timing of when these things are happening. So a lot of the guesswork and unpredictability is removed for us. So use it to your advantage. August to December, you want to have awareness, and your website, it can be supporting that, informing people, making sure they're familiar with your brand, and that you're on the long list. And as many people as possible are starting to go, oh, I didn't realize this, but XYZ Media can offer supplemental reading solutions to my 6th graders. That's good news. Then, January through April, this is consideration and trial. So you want to start moving to these interactive types of communications and medium. And email with content with demo requests and links. Maybe you've got some recorded product reviews is great here too. Direct mail catalogs may be a good fit. Different workshops and very specific product-driven types of messages, and maybe even conferences are a good fit for right here. Then moving into May through July, when, up until the coming school year, you've got planning and purchasing. They're getting ready for back to school. You want to fine tune your website and inform all the different pieces of that purchase process. And you want to develop content. You want to have strategies that really are in line with getting people to cross that finish line. Maybe you've even got some new research, and that would be a great way to do some efficacy, because maybe there's some funding that's tied to that. Your ecosystem, your channel planning, and your performance measurement all needs to fit with this, and you need to make sure that you've got your actual plan in place. So we've talked about broadcast, we've talked about interacting with people, and we've talked about engaging with people. So let's actually move to some examples of what this might look like in the marketplace. If you're looking to broadcast, you are going to have always on types of channels. And in our world, it used to be really just TV, but now with, the internet and everything else, there's lots of different ways you can broadcast your message. It's one-way communication. So here you can see an example from Pearson, which is a company that I'm sure we're all familiar with. And all of this is pieces of their puzzle that you can fit together, right? So on their Facebook page, you can see they even start to try to understand who's in the market for specific lines of their product. World languages community, for example. So now they can start to understand who is it and what types of schools might be interested at some point in world languages. They maybe are decision makers, users of world languages. They teach this, make decisions around it. So as they try to get to the part where they're understanding, this is Pearson, trying to understand who is actually maybe ready this year to do something, they're going to have some other types of awareness activities, right? So you can see in the middle, 5 ways to individualize instruction for heritage speakers. That's not really product, right? It's more of like what we might call a thought leadership topic. But you can rest assured that Pearson has a product that helps an educator individualize instruction for heritage speakers. But they'll get there, because again, we're building this message. So they're going to have that article, maybe they'll have a webinar on it, and then they will do something with those people who have started to interact with their brand. And then you can see on the right, they also have, it's a non-linear path. So they take advantage of people at the point of interaction, where you can see here, if you sign up for the newsletter, once you've hit submit with your email address, they pop up an offer to purchase right then with a promo code. You've just interacted, but they don't know, maybe you are ready to engage right then or very shortly, so they're going to make it super easy for you to choose their brand. So let's move on to some of the interact types of communication and examples again. So broadcast, engaging with the brand, and now you're going to engage with the product. So here you can see that Pearson is actually going to sponsor and attend a live event called WCET, and that's where people can actually start to interact with the brand on the sales floor. They can attend, maybe a demo topic, and on the right, you can see an example of another type of interaction. This is where people are interacting with the brand. They're going to have a live Facebook chat with an author of their product, a math book. So here they're going to understand who was at this WCET event and also who attended this Facebook Live. Now they can start moving people into engage. So again, we need to think about all of this together. So on the left, you can see this is an example of how Pearson works to engage with people, get a little bit of information, make that connection, and start to really refine and have much more specific communications. But that doesn't mean that they don't stop with some of the awareness and some of the interactions, right? So broadcast, that's just SEO. Benefits of blended learning for K-12 education. It's readily available. It's one way. That's great. Then interaction. Maybe you click on that and you move to this interaction piece where you see, how do you become a digital learning visionary? You're just going to click and kind of, maybe interact a little bit. But from that, Pearson can now have a landing page or an email follow-up where they're saying, hey, let's build a program that grows with you. Reach out to us. Give us some information. And now maybe they're ready for inside sales, or maybe they're ready to talk to a sales rep. So these are some concrete examples of how this actually comes to life. So how do you make sure that you are demonstrating the success of all of your hard work to your leadership and your own stakeholders in your organization? So we're going to talk about how you attribute value and success. We're going to talk about meaningful reporting, because it's really important that the lines of communication are open and you're being super transparent. And then we're going to talk about how you design your marketing team for success in this type of digital world. So attribution, it's a big buzzword. And so here we've just kind of listed out 5 options for attributing to success. And I think that these work really well for ongoing, how you are managing, your communication, and it's apples to apples. So first quarter, you're looking at the same type of attribution and value assignment versus in second and third and fourth quarter. So you always know what's more successful or less successful relative to, time of year, etc. And these can be great. And, there's first touch, last touch, pretty self-explanatory. There's linear, there's time decay, position-based, where those ones are where you just sort of make some decisions about what percent of 100 those individual will get different value assignments. And again, it's a way for you to just communicate with the company. Everyone understands how you're doing this value. But, the journey is far from linear. And there's, like we've talked about, there's different stakeholder groups, and you're going to find that people jump in and out of the process. But the institution might actually continue down the purchasing process. So you don't want to discount pieces of the communication ecosystem that might actually be working, but because of your attribution model, maybe you're not seeing it. So in the spirit of always wanting to justify your investment and continuing to make sure that you are driving, the business and marketing qualified leads, you want to perhaps consider a couple different techniques that you would use occasionally, so maybe once or twice a year. So if your product is a bigger ticket item, a subscription-based product, for example, you want to ensure that those lower performing channels don't necessarily get cut off when you're looking at everything that has to do with success. So this first one that you see here, forensics, this is going to work well if you are smaller, high ticket, low volume. And what you're going to do is look at closed won deals from a particular time period, maybe a month, maybe a quarter. It depends on your sales cycle. And what you're going to do is pull all of the interaction and engagement data from the closed won accounts and the associated contacts, and just look and see, what did people do? Did everyone attend one webinar? Maybe everyone attended 2 webinars that were part of the closed won group. And so that's going to tell you that attending a webinar is a great predictor of successful closing of sales. And you definitely want to keep those webinars on the list of activities that you're going to be doing. Maybe it's that every single contact associated with those accounts likes your Facebook page or follows you on Instagram. So you might start to see some patterns that are going to help inform what you do moving forward. This is what works. Maybe you spent a ton of money on white papers and very few people in the contacts associated with closed won accounts actually downloaded them. So that's going to tell you, wow, maybe that's not a good spend. Even though perhaps if you look discreetly at that white paper, there were a lot of downloads. But if it's not actually mapping back to closed deals, maybe it's just not, a good pull-in for the actual people who are a good fit for your product. The second one is no contact control groups. If you have a large customer base or high transaction volume, this one can work really well. And you can put it in place ongoing, but it's also something you can do just periodically. Basically what you do is you say, I have a prospect list of 100,000 people, and I'm going to take 10% of them and remove them. They're not going to receive any marketing. The other 90% will. And then after a period of time that's appropriate for your particular selling window, however long it takes typically, you are going to say, of the people that received my marketing, X% converted. Of the people that did not receive my marketing, X% converted. So maybe it's 10% of the no contact group, and it was 60% of the people, the contact group, the people who received your marketing. So you know that the incremental impact of marketing is 10% minus 60%, so 50% lift from your marketing efforts. That's a really great solid number that can help you paint the picture of what it is you bring to the business. And it can also help you understand that your marketing is working. Or if a year ago it was 50% conversion, 10% in the no contact control, maybe a year from now it's 70% in the marketing because you've been optimizing, and no contact control, people who don't receive your marketing, they're still at 10%. So that's going to help paint a great picture for you too. So this is, attribution models are important, and also just making sure that in general you're always trying to find ways to define your success and show what marketing brings to the table. So let's get into actual reporting. So this is, you've defined your optimization, your attribution model, and you've said, I'm going to do some forensics, maybe once a year, and I'm going to do some no contact control twice a year, and I'm going to put it all together, and I have ongoing reporting, and I have some, key points of reporting and some recalibration. So you want to always make sure, again, that whatever it is you're doing, the success metrics match the purpose of what you were trying to do. And you need to be really transparent about that in your reporting and communication with leadership and your peers and colleagues. So for example, if you're doing something that's an awareness communication, you've got to measure it in reach, impressions, likes, and shares, not newsletter signups, webinar registrations. And those newsletter signups and webinar registrations, that's appropriate if your communication is designed around the consideration phase. So keeping that as part of your reporting is really important and is going to help you really tell the story of what you're bringing to the table. The other thing is tracking. You've got to set up your tracking properly. And you want to make sure that your model is custom for your business. Your business is different. You have different strengths. And you want to make sure that your communication messages really highlight that. And you want to make sure that your channels are appropriately leveraged for the full customer journey: awareness, consideration, and purchase. You want to provide, you want to make sure that you're communicating the right amount of credit so that you're actually delivering great leads to your sales team. And you want to optimize all of this to the outcomes that are aligned to the actual needs of your business. So this last one is a really great way to connect with the final thing that we're going to be talking about right now: how you set up your organization. So we've talked about all the different ways, and we've really dug into how you can actually do this and make some of this happen. But one of the key things that you can do to really optimize your marketing efforts is you've got to be able to nimbly adjust your communication and your campaign plans. And there's two ways to set up a marketing organization. You can set it up via channel, or you can set it up via campaign or program. And so here we've kind of pointed out some of the pros and cons of each of these. But if your goal is really to optimize and to nimbly adjust your communication and campaign plans, you have to have your people structured in a way that allows you to do that. And if you want to make sure that your marketing aligns with business goals, you have to align your people appropriately as well. So in order to do this, your people actually need to be responsible for programs and campaigns, not specific channels. If you have these people assigned to channels and they only know how to do those things, for example, email, and then you start to find out that email doesn't work very well for you, you've got a person with a skill set that you can't really use. So instead, work to match your people to actual goals or objectives of the business. As an example, maybe you want to retain more customers. So you as a business have set your retention goal year over year to increase by 10%. And now you've got someone in charge of that goal. And they are going to develop the right mix of channels and messages and contact segmentation to do that. Or maybe it's growth in rural schools. You say, we're highly saturated in urban markets. We want to grow our business by 10% in rural this year. Put someone in charge of it. And now you've got someone who's going to look at all the different ways to grow your business in a rural area. And this is a goal that I've worked with myself. And what I found is, what's really different about the channel mix is, instead of going to like some of the big shows, like you might be familiar with ISTE or FETC or TCEA, when you start to say, I want to be successful in rural schools, you're going to find that there's tons of live conferences and events that gather these people who are spread out all over the place, kind of hard to reach with the physical sales force. But you can go to, for example, the Illinois Computing Educators Conference and connect with a lot of these people in a really meaningful way on their terms. And that's going to, my guess would be, a tactic that your person who's now in charge of growing business in rural schools and districts, that's something that they're going to find. And they wouldn't if that person was only in charge of email. They would be a subject matter expert in email, focused on that and worried about the performance of that. So that is what I really think can help drive the success of a marketing organization. Set yourself up for success, and then start to actually look at the actual ecosystem and make decisions around that. So let's review what we've talked about. All the different channels that we have today that are really exciting, but it's a lot to work with. And so, you want to identify, again, your points of contact, and you're going to have multiple touches with each of those people that you've identified as being great fits. And you want to move people through that journey. And to do this with all these, different parts and pieces moving, a simple way to do that is to just think about it in terms of awareness, consideration, and purchase. Your goal is to personalize messaging and make things really compelling and relevant to that individual or for that institution, and not get so caught up in the details of a bigger buying cycle. You want to track everything properly so you can optimize it. However you want to attribute your success, make sure that you've got your tracking set up and that you're looking at it frequently. And occasionally just do some deep dives. Maybe it's forensics, maybe it's no contact control. And make sure throughout this whole process that your customer segmentation maps directly to the messaging that you're putting out there, that your data-informed practices are actually coming to life in what you're saying to people, based on the type of school that they're at or the role that they have. And this is the way that you're going to discover success and then keep it going, because you're going to attribute, you're going to report, you're going to optimize. So that is the ecosystem. Alyssa, if I could hand it back to you. I don't know if we have any questions from anyone. I'm happy to move to that.
Liz, thank you for sharing with us this morning. So folks, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but invite you now to use the questions function in the GoToWebinar in case you have any questions for Liz. Okay, great. So one question, Liz, has come up. So especially in the case of attribution models, there's a question around tools for beginners and how a marketer started.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. I'm glad that one was asked. So we didn't get into any of the tools. That's a big topic. I think that especially if you're just getting started, and some of this might be managing change within the business. You've come in and they're really looking for you to make marketing an investment and do a lot with the marketing campaigns and activities. So I think that one of the best things you can do is use tools that are already really well known, that they're solid, they're proven. Don't try to get with the latest and greatest and the shiny objects, because you don't want your conversation to be around defending the tool. You want the conversation to be around the information that it's providing and how it's informing your decisions and strategies. So I think that the very best way to start is to start with Google Analytics. There are lots of pre-populated models that you can use, and it can be integrated with your website, your marketing automation system, as well as your CRM system. So make sure that all those integrations are set up. And the side note to that is that'll take care of a lot of the tracking automatically. And then you have this tool. Everyone's heard of Google. No one's going to push back on you around is that true? Is that valid? Yes. Another great tool is Moz, and that's, again, a really well-known tool. It's going to inform your SEO strategies, and there's no cost options on both of these fronts. And as you grow and get more sophisticated and proven yourself, you can get into where you get really specific and fancy with the Moz or the Google Analytics, or even start trying some other tools that are maybe newer to the market to really refine and tailor your strategies. Yeah, but that's a great question. So thank you for asking that. And just start with Google Analytics and go from there.
And Liz, there's a second question also around tools, but specific to tracking. I mean, you've kind of covered that in your previous response, but in case you wanted to add anything else.
Okay.
No.
So to tracking. Okay, so tracking. Yeah, so one of the things is if you've got your website and you've got marketing automation or your CRM, or sometimes even better, you haven't identified which marketing automation or CRM tool you'd like to use, make sure that they can be integrated. And that's going to take care of a lot of your tracking. And then the next thing is you need to track things, but you need to track everything. And so what that kind of means is that you have to have in place some business practices and make some decisions about what you're going to track and how you're going to track it. And a lot of it comes down to like how you name things. For example, so I've worked with Click Dimensions, and I've worked with Marketo, and I've worked with Pardot, and a little bit with Eloqua. And a lot of it is folder structures, and there's some hierarchies. And so you just want to make sure that you sort of understand how those things fit together, and then decide, I am going to set up my tracking high level based on channel. So I'm going to have email, I'm going to have social, I'm going to have whatever. Or maybe you say, you know what, I'm going to have things based more on like a life cycle model, and I'm going to track my campaigns based on where people are at or how they came in, or it's a thought leadership webinar, it's the website, but you can track everything. So you can, if you've got a white paper that you want people to download, you want to load it into your marketing automation tool, and it will create a tracking link or a trackable file, and that's what you want to market with. And it will just go against that contact's record, their profile. Did they look at it? Did they share it? Who else opened it? And that's going to give you a lot of information. And from, as marketers, we're one to many. So you're going to be able to look at it, aggregate it all together, which pieces are really popular, which ones aren't. Your sales team is, because you have to have everything integrated, they're going to go over it into their CRM tool, and they're going to be able to see that Sally at XYZ school visited the website, visited these pages, and downloaded these 3 papers. And based on the themes and topics that were on all those different things, they're going to really be able to paint a great picture of what Sally's interested in. So that's, tracking. Some of it is, organization, making some decisions on how you want to set up your groups and what you want to track, and then just making sure that you really understand everything can be tracked. You want to send out your emails through your marketing automation tool only. You want all of your marketing pieces and sales enablement tools to have tracking links from your marketing automation system. You want it integrated into your website so that all of that is connected, and you want your social media connected as well. And you want to have, then you can test and optimize. Maybe you want to do a special campaign for people who are on your Facebook like list, and see if you can uncover anyone who's in the market and do some targeting there. So the other piece of tracking that we didn't really get into is there's a lot of embedded tools in a marketing automation system where you can do individual email split testing. You can do something called test and roll, and that's going to help you to understand and actually take advantage immediately of, if you've got 2 different email executions and one of them performs better than the other, the system itself will look at those 2, roll them out, get to the part where they can make a determination as to which one performs better, and then send that out to the rest of your group. So with the tools in place, a lot of this stuff gets taken care of. What you need to do is figure out what you want to test, how you want to test it. The actual testing, implementation, and tracking of things is really taken care of. Just take advantage of your tools.
And Liz, we do have one more question.
Mm-hmm.
If your organization is set up with a channel approach, but you're recognizing that you might need to take a program approach to your campaigns, how can
Mm-hmm.
Agile be helpful, and what can Agile offer?
Yeah, so some of it is, all of us are really well versed in sort of the ideal situation. And so helping to inform what that might look like would be one way. The other way is, if you have people who are a team that's responsible across channels, having shared goals is a way to bring people together. So in that sense, especially, if that's what you've got to work with, that's what you've got to work with. So you can say, you know what, we want to grow our business in rural areas. So then what you want to do, and this is where Agile can come into play on this, you can say, I'm going to get some objective data and information to help us understand how we do that. Who are we targeting? What does that look like? How are we doing right now in rural markets? So that's where we can do, an e-profile. We can do other types of analysis of those types of a specific market or a certain type of school. And we can just give you a lot of information. What does that look like? How are you underperforming, overperforming? Which areas, which specific demographic data points are actually important and critical when it comes to your best prospects or your best customers and lookalike targeting. So that's where we can help you. And then you have your team all working together toward these goals. And so success doesn't suddenly look like Sally doing great email and Joe growing Twitter, followers. It looks like everyone working together and making really great decisions in how we're using these different channels to meet the goal of growing our business. And we know that schools with high Title I, for example, are a really great target. And so Joe is going to be trying to grow his Twitter following with people who are at high Title I schools. And suddenly it's just a very different type of approach. So that's what we can help you uncover, that type of information to really just objectively inform what you're trying to do. And then you can translate it across your different channels if that's how you're structured right now.
Thank you, Liz. We had a question about whether this will be recorded. This session has been recorded, and it will go out to you along with a handout and the slides via email when we are completed. Liz, any parting thoughts?
I think keeping, as challenging as it might be, just keeping everything in mind as you work through your campaign planning, and always optimize, continuous improvement, always look at your reports, analyze your reports, make different decisions moving forward, and be nimble is the best way to be successful and really add a lot of value to your business. Yeah, so thank you, Alyssa. I appreciate this. This has been great.
Of course. Thank you, everybody. We hope you had an enriching panel, and we'll look forward to hearing you next month.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, shutting down. Bye now.